Hey YouTube, Awesome Writer here, and today's video is called Why I'm Worried About BoonBoomger. But I want to be clear here at the beginning. Why I'm worried about BoonBoomger is, that name's really kind of annoying to say, to be honest. Why I'm worried about it is more about me as a fan personally, not like in a, like, we deserve it way, the fans deserve it, I'm worried about the franchise because the fans know better, I want them to change because obviously I'm very far removed from the target audience, so I have like no voting power. But I don't believe fans should have any voting power, period, even if you are the target range. This is just more of a personal video talking about my experience right now with Toku and worrying about it going forward if BoonBoomger ends up being a little bit more of a stupid series. Now again, there's nothing wrong with a silly and fun poppy Toku series. You know, everyone's gonna have different things they want out of Toku. I find there's little bits of all kinds of, like, I like about Toku, like sometimes more mature, sometimes silly. It just really depends. This is just more about me worried about the lineup of BoonBoomger and Gotchard, because as of this recording, when I'm recording this, and I want to try to get it up before the pictures come out, we don't have the pictures yet, but that could mean anything. I mean, Gaim looked like it could be the most silly, dumb show of all time, and it was like one of the deeper series. So the suits might not necessarily be an indicator of how silly or mature a series is or whatever. But the rumor is that they're going to step back to being a little bit more light and silly and fun after years, because they want to go back to like capturing the smallest demographic, literally, like in terms of age and height. It has me just a little bit worried because, again, it's a kid's show, it's always going to be aimed at kids. You know, there's a discussion for another time of something I brought up in the recent video talking about this, that I don't understand why they wouldn't want to cast the widest net possible, because I do think it's possible to appeal to the very young demographic without alienating the slightly older demographic. And by that I don't mean me, I mean like 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds, even 12-year-olds, where like I think it's completely doable. You can still capture the young audience without alienating the older audience or making it inappropriate for the younger audience. But that's like a good discussion, but for another time. But the point of this more so is, again, I know it's a kid's show, but it's not like, people always will shame and say like, well, of course it's a kid's show, it's gonna be silly, why are you even talking about this? But that's when you say when people say stuff like that, it acts like Sentai every year is a really silly Barney show. And it's not. And I'm not one of those people that think Sentai is a really amazing show that should be on HBO. But we all know that it can actually be a pretty good show sometimes. So it's silly to reduce it to act like it's always Barney. So that's why this discussion always kind of comes up of people being annoyed when it goes back to the more childish, because we know it's not always like that. And it's good to have varied tones. I'm really rambling, that's why it's called Dawson Rambles. The point of this is, the reason I'm worried about it being a little bit more of a back to basics, possibly sillier, lighter show is that's kind of what Gotchard is right now for Rider. And again, there's not necessarily anything wrong with that, but that's why this video is about me personally and my experience, is that I'm worried about having both shows as part of the Superhero Time lineup being something I'm not really enjoying. Because if you didn't know, in terms of Rider, in terms of Toku in general, I've been falling on and off with Sentai and Rider in recent years with Toku fatigue, because the franchises are so repetitive. A lot of the times it's like purgatory, which is another reason why it's disappointing to see Sentai possibly dial back after making so much progress with like Dawn Brothers and King Oger and stuff with innovation and narrative. Is it's like you feel like you saw the light at the end of the tunnel and it was just more tunnel. It's like Sentai can feel like such purgatory. But I've been falling on and off, more so with Rider. But I came back with Geats like near the end, and it got me back into Rider a bit because it was reminding me of things I liked about it, and it was also being kind of different. It got me really enthused. It happened to be around a time that we were getting news about the new Rider, which was Gotchard, and I was really loving the look of the suits and the aesthetics. I was super pumped. And then Gotchard comes along and is like everything I will dislike about Rider, and it's just a very bland experience at best, and at worst, Hotaro. And so that hasn't been the greatest. But the reason that I'm worried about this in regards to BoonBoomger is the nice thing about Gotchard, you know, being bad, not the nice thing about it being bad, but the nice thing is I have King Oger over here. So that's something I found over the years is more often than not, I can't think of a time, you know, off the top of my head, I'm sure there was a time, but they were few and far between, but I can't think of a time when both Sentai and Rider were really bad for me. Like truly bad. There's almost always one that's a bright spot. So if I'm not enjoying one for one reason or the other, when I go over to the other one, it balances it out a little bit. And there's been times over the years where it's been good at the same time. You know, like obviously I was enjoying Geats and King Oger at the same time when I started watching live. So, but that's the thing, is I found that I'm sure there's an example of a time where I wasn't enjoying both. But for the most part, Like, the universe keeps things perfectly balanced, as all things should be, where when I'm not enjoying Rider or I'm not enjoying Sentai, the other one's better enough that it keeps a nice balance so that I'm able to watch both and feel balanced until the other one gets better or a new series comes out. But my fear is, this whole time I've been like, okay, that kind of sucks that, I got into Geats and I was all in a Rider mood and Gotchard's kind of crushing that spirit for me. But then I got King Oger over here and it's been enjoyable and it's created a nice balance. Like, honestly, for years, for whatever reason, I always watched Sentai first and then Rider. I don't know, out of habit, I don't know if that's the airing order, but that's the way I always would, view them in my head. But now I've started doing Rider first and then Sentai because I don't want to end on a bad note, which is Gotchard. But I'm worried that if BoonBoomger is kind of like Gotchard, where it's just kind of like lacking of substance and has really annoying characters, that it's going to be both shows are that. And that just worries me. Again, this is like as a personal thing. There might be people out there, I'm sure there are, love Gotchard, love that type of show. If BoonBoomger's like that, that's going to be a great 40 minutes for you. I'm just saying it definitely worries me as a fan that, like, right now I have this nice balance where King Oger is kind of a nice upper after Gotchard brings me down. But if both series are like that, I think that will be unfortunate for me. Like, I'll still cover it, obviously, hopefully, unless it really grinds my spirit into the ground, but it definitely is a worry. And it does bring me back to something I definitely miss about when I first got into Rider. Back in my day, I'm an old toku fogey now, is that when Rider and Sentai did feel more distinctly different, obviously they still are to a degree, but they definitely are a lot more similar now in terms of style and tone and everything. And that was definitely something nice about back in the day. It's not even about like, oh, Rider was serious, I'm sure, put it on HBO again. It's just like, they definitely felt different, and it was really nice to get that variety. And the fact that they feel so samey, kind of blurs the lines a bit. And the idea of having two shows so similar, with possibly Gotchard and this being sillier, just kind of makes that problem even worse, which is just kind of annoying. But we'll have to see. Again, I'm making this video, very early speculation. We haven't seen the suits yet, and again, the suits don't have to be an indicator. Again, I bring up Kamen Rider Gotchard, which when I first saw it, definitely looked like it was, ready to be one of those super silly series, but it ended up surprising me, so the suits aren't an indicator, and I'm ready to be surprised. And there can be very fun series that, have a lot of elements that seem funner and sillier that are bringing in the younger audience, but can actually be surprisingly good. Like, someone brought up Abaranger. I think that's a great example of, like, it's very bright and colorful and, eye-catchy, and it's got lots of silly and fun stuff for the kids, but it also, in my opinion, has some really good characters, a really interesting mythology. I would love to see something like that, where that's a good example of being able to hit the best of both worlds, and that's one of the reasons I like Abaranger, is it's so much almost like a sampler platter of all the tones Toku can offer, because you might have a really dramatic scene, a really dark character backstory, but then you got Whacker Wilson coming in and everyone's wearing wigs. So I'm just going to say, I'm reserving my full judgment. I just wanted to make kind of a video just to discuss my worries, more so about, like, I don't want both halves of superhero time to be, like, landing in the lost column for me. But what do you guys think? Are you apprehensive about it? Are you actually maybe enjoying Gotchard? So more of the same of that sounds good to you. Let me know in the comments as always. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps, turning on that bell so you get notifications for my videos. Dawson Rider, signing out.